Hello, everybody. This is Dwayne Newstater and Tony Trussell with Laurie Newsham, our guest today on Tree Actions, where people get together and share about their reactions to growing up, living, and being part of the human forest. And we're really excited about today's guest, Laurie Newsham. Laurie's, a longtime personal friend, family friend, uh, and fellow arborist. Uh, Laurie, I think I'm not sure. Was it 1989? Is that was that the year we met? I think 88 or 89.
Yeah, I think it was 89, Dwayne, back in the green drop days there.
Yeah.
That's what when I was thinking about talking to you guys, thinking, okay, when did it all begin?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
while
it
ago. I
was.
was I was still in the service then, so you'd have to travel around to find me.
And Laurie, we normally let people share a little bit about themselves and how you would describe your your birth into the human forest and a bit of its journey thus far. But we're certainly that's what we're going to delve into. And but how do you describe your uh, who you are, where you are, and how you got in the forest?
No, absolutely, yeah. No, I'll give you a bit of an intro for sure. So yeah, those were pivotal and formative years, and I've thought a little bit about using those words and their meaning, and definitely pivotal and formative years. That 88, 89 area. I got married in 88 to the woman that I still get to be married to, Carla. And at that time, in 1988, I joined up with that company we know as Green Drop Lawns here in especially Western Canada. I spent 5 years at that company, still a part of my life. Many of the people that I got to work with in the 5 years there that I was there, and they got me pointed in the direction of trees, and I began a, a love, I guess, right? Or the love discovered me about working with trees, understanding trees, and having them just a really significant part of my life. And yeah, I even had the privilege and the honor of speaking at a couple of the Green Drop corporate get-togethers over the years, where I've been able to share some of my experiences. And yeah, I don't know. People say, well, you talk about Green Drop a lot. Well, I guess so. They gave me a good start and helped me see some things about me without condemning me, and paid me a fair wage, and grateful for their input in my life. And probably would have met Dwayne Newstater if I hadn't been able to uh, be at Green Drop when he joined up there, for sure. So yeah, that's, I guess that's the early part of the start. Is
Yep,
that what
yep.
we're?
Laurie, maybe it seems like as far as the history, we every time we've been doing these, we go back to the beginning, and maybe you want to we ask everyone their connection to training and when it all started. Now, maybe your exposure to training and where that came from and who it was with, and then how that impacted you and how you eventually got involved in training, because all of us were students before we were trainers, and uh, and maybe just how that journey led you through uh you know Arbor Master, Arbor Canada, and then obviously the college.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I mean, I still consider myself a student, and I'm sure you guys do too. And as Thor even mentioned, I know he's not the first person to mention it. The more you
Mm-hmm.
know, the more you know you don't know, right? And Thor, I know Thor didn't originate that, but he believes it and lives it, and so do I. So I totally get that for sure. Yeah. Oh man, yeah. What a journey! What a journey! So my first exposure to training was when Carla and I returned to Alberta, uh, left the chicken farm that is part of the legacy of the New Staters and the Rhymers and all that, and then came to Olds College, where Dwayne was the lead faculty in the arboriculture program, and he had just finished creating that great entity, and I came back to get my applied degree in horticulture technology at Olds, and of course reconnected with Dwayne in a bigger way, and ended up getting invited to go with him to help out. You know how it is, and like Thor and Norm talked about, you just hang around, right? It's you don't expect to get paid. It's not like, oh man, I hope they pay me today. It's not about that. It was like, wow, I got paid so much in the things that I learned and the exposure to people that I only read about in the Arborist News, right? Or heard about in the ISA, and all of a sudden Dwayne's introducing me to these people. It's like, holy cow, I'm a lucky guy. And so so I got to help out and learn with Dwayne on multiple courses in BC and in Alberta, and even in Saskatchewan up here. Didn't make it all the way out to Winnipeg, but I have since then for sure for training, and that's been a good thing. So yeah, that's where it was. So I remember, this is kind of a funny story. Carla and I and our three girls, of course, moved back to Olds and got a little duplex that we could afford while I was in school, and Dwayne happened to be that day there that when we were moving in, and Ken Palmer is right there, and Dwayne finagles him into helping us move our piano, because Carla's a music teacher.
Yeah.
Our full-blown upright grand piano. That's probably what wrecked Ken's hip. It has nothing to do with tree climbing. It's because of that piano up there in Canada. And he helped us move that piano down into the basement. And I thought, okay, these guys are regular guys. All the rest, they just know some things that I don't know, and I would love to know, as well as build a relationship that goes beyond.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That was I remember that now. And I think, Laurie, you were one of the first, the first ever Arbor Master training series that took place in Western Canada, or in the Central. I think BC had started. Well, I'm not sure if BC had done something already. They might have done a seminar, but you were in that first group.
Yeah, I remember being up at Norm's place, and we were doing the bridging program, because I think there had a BC thing had happened, and there was some of us who were feeling like we're getting left behind, and you guys created the bridge program to bring as many of us up to speed as you possibly could, and up to Norm's place, and did a whole bunch of training and learning there, and chipping brush, and
right. That goes down. That was
for sure. Yeah,
that would have been.
And you may.
When was that?
Yeah, well, that had to be 99, 98, 99, somewhere in there. And you'll remember this, Dwayne. You set up a whole Arbor Master competition where I helped you harvest spruce poles, right? And we buried them in the ground at the old fairgrounds, and had a big competition there. And so many of those trees are gone. I've thought about them many times, that were actually that we actually did a competition in there right by the Olds Library. Sorry about that. Really talking like.
Well, it was the regional finals. It was the first regional finals, and weren't you competing in them, Laurie?
That's right. Yes.
Oh,
I did. I got second place. That's the story of my life. Always following the leaders around, but what they don't know is I learn a whole lot from those first placers, and I don't have all the pressure to perform, because I'm
no stranger to second place either, Laurie. You know that. Like as many times as Chris Patterson is on that Prairie Chapter trophy, I'm second to most every one of them. And holy crap! And I think he's like Jesse passed him now for the most consecutive wins, or the most wins in our chapter. But Chris is still the second, and I was second to him for most of those, so I can relate.
Okay, well, thank you. It's been a great place to be. I'm happy to be there. I'm not complaining at all. It's very cool.
The reason Laurie has referenced a couple of times our family and Nancy's family, which is Reimers, and Laurie was the best man at Nancy and I's wedding. So that's why I introduced in the beginning. It's as much as we're colleagues, we've been friends as well through a lot of different scenarios and circumstances. Um, but Laurie, maybe your journey with the college, how, I mean, that's probably been one of your major accomplishments. I know that you have many, and I know that you don't uh, rank them in order of value. I think you would line them up horizontally in your family and would be right along there with all that. So um, just 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 a bit on that, your college days.
Yeah, absolutely. But I have to comment too on the privilege it was to be your best man and just be your friend in those early years. Absolutely, that's huge, Dwayne, and that Nancy and you would trust our family enough to introduce us to all your families and be part of that. It's been
You're welcome.
huge. It's been huge. It's good. It's good. So yeah, the college. Good. Thank you. The college journey. It was a good one. I got a lot of value out of that, and I think I contributed quite a bit of value as well. And again, how did that happen? Well, because Dwayne moved on to greener pastures. So there was an opening at Olds College when Dwayne left that to fully pursue the Arbor Master and Arboriculture Canada journey that he's been on, that you've been on. So I applied for those openings and worked from just being I mean, there is no such thing as just, right? I'm trying to correct myself in those words. I worked myself from being a contract instructor, delivering 1 or 2 courses, and into a permanent part-time, and then into a permanent full-time, full member of faculty. And yeah, I've learned all kinds of things about not just trees. And there I use the word just again. Trees plus relationships, post-secondary institutions, gone way farther into that world, I'll say, than I ever thought I would. And I enjoy learning a great deal. And I have a few diplomas and certificates from post-secondary that isn't related to Olds College at all, or sorry, to horticulture or arboriculture at all. And because I enjoy those. But how did I ever see myself as a faculty member, or even beyond sitting on board of governors or something like that? Not a chance. So it's been a good journey, and Olds College has treated me very well and given me all kinds of opportunities to develop my skills as an arborist and as an educator and as a trainer. But
Well,
let's
Laura, when
not
I
give
think
all the
about
credit to Olds
the
College.
concept of the human forest, and when I kind of thought up that term, and I don't know that I'm the first one to use it, but I'm certainly using it now. Um, you're a major
Mm-hmm.
example of that to me. Of someone that not only contributes to arboriculture, but I'd like to delve into a little bit, and this might be a bit personal, and it's probably something you didn't expect, but your attention to detail and words. Even when you said when you talk about your Carla, your wife, that you get to be married to, um, and the way the level of attention and detail that you pay to respecting almost everything. Um, and how you word and say things and phrase things and say, well, not just, no, nothing's just. That's another example. Like, what is it? Can you talk about that and where that? Because I think that's such a part of what everybody loves about you and knows about you and respects about you. And maybe you can give us some insight into what that's all about for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I probably can. And no, I didn't expect that. And it's not like I've spent a whole bunch of time there. And I got to remember, who am I sitting with here? I'm sitting with a master wordsmith, right, of the written word, and then I'm sitting with a master wordsmith of the verbal word. And a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? And a video's 10,000 or something like that, right? So yeah, so I'm honored to be in the midst of you guys, and know I have my own thing to contribute too. I don't know. People matter, and how? Well, again, Thor mentioned this. Here we go. Arbor Master, Arboriculture Canada training. How you do anything is how you do everything, and that just resounds in me, right? Whether I'm talking to that young lady who's serving me up a coffee at the local coffee bar, meeting her eye, not looking where I shouldn't look, right? To respect her and asking her about her day.
Yeah.
People matter.
Yeah.
They really do. And even when Carla and I bought the little company called Tree Keepers Incorporated from you and Nancy Duane, and we made it our own, right? And the logo, our company logo, there was people and trees growing together, and we purposely put people first, right? And I think there is a hierarchical order there, and I'm gonna save the person before I save the tree. And I know not everyone will agree with me on that, and that's okay. That's okay. But that would be my priority. So, yeah, I guess people matter, and I try to convey that and communicate that, whether it's in my written words or my spoken or my video words, or however I do that, for sure.
Anyone that would get to know you or does know you, knows you for that, and like I said, respects you for it. It's clearly done out of respect, and it's sincere, I think would be the right word to describe it. As far as your the state of affairs of arboriculture, like in your career, being a 20-year college professor teaching arboriculture diploma, involved in the tree climbing competition as a rescue tech for a long time, and a chair before that. And what do you think has been when did the big change in arboriculture happen? How did it connect with the training that was going on, and how's that going today? As far as, is it just the newest shiniest thing, or are we, as the major innovation happened? That's a big topic, but I'm just curious how you would describe the evolution of tree climbing. Let's just focus on that in the past 20 years, from when you started to now. And now, what was your first knot and hitch and saddle to now?
Well, I don't think the knot, hitches, and saddles were a whole lot different than yours and Tony's. Right? Exactly. Yeah, I never ever had to earn my living climbing in a bowl and on a bite. I'm not that old. At least I had a harness and a saddle to wear, right? But the taut line hitch was the go-to hitch. It was a figure eight, and for whatever reason, you tied a figure eight between the bridge and the hitch. In the bridge between the hitch and your attachment knot, right? Your termination knot. And of course, learned after a while that, okay, that's why that's there. So you know where to cut it. As if we would, right? And I know that goes way back. Sorry. So, yeah. Well, I would say that my opinion that, man, in the early 2000s, that's where I really saw, maybe others saw it sooner, I think probably, the changes that were occurring, and the implementation of I'm not French, so I can't do it justice, the Veldetain, the Veldeton, when it came in and replaced even the Blake's hitch. And the Blake's hitch was a big innovation for so many of us, but it didn't last very long because we had some of these other hitches to come in. And that was happening in my life as a college instructor and as a business owner in the early 2000s is when I saw so much of that and realized, okay, if I'm going to be an effective educator and trainer, then I have got to stay as up to date as I possibly can. And much of that happened. And I know this is not our Canada advertisement, unless I choose to make it so, and I choose to make it so. is Arboriculture Canada kept me up to date in conjunction with the ISA, but with the practical hands-on, where's climbing going? How are we going to look after trees? That's where I really saw that happening. And so in the early 2000s, right up, as it continues today too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Does that
If
help
you had
answer some of that
put
question?
say your top 3 innovations that you think really impacted even how you taught or what you taught, like when you say, what
Ooh.
would the top 3 be that stick out in your mind where you actually, started teaching or showing something different because it was, and why you chose those?
Top 3. Okay, well here's the first one, and I wasn't teaching then, but the
Right.
first one is just that fair lead, right into
Yeah.
the bottom of the tot line or the bottom of the blakes. And where did I learn that? This is a rhetorical question. Dwayne, you showed that to me. You were so excited about it, and I tried not to be because I wasn't in. I was too selfish to enjoy your enjoyment of it. But
Ah.
it was out on the chicken farm, right in front of the old farmhouse, and you came out
Yeah.
one day as a visit and said, "Lord, you got to see this. This is just so much better. You can one hand all the way out on the end to
Yeah.
the end of this limb, and you know how you are, and you just showed and just demonstrated all of that." And I thought, "Holy cow, I am so far behind now." Right. And that I had taken a 2-year hiatus from arboriculture and was learning a whole lot more about raising chickens and that sort of thing at that time. And that was part of where I decided that, okay, I got to change this. I want back in arboriculture. And that was a monumental moment there. So that's probably number 1 right there. Second one was not just the Velveteen, but all those new hitches that came in, right? And that you could actually descend so fast that you could burn right through
Yeah.
those outer coverings. And you remember Ultratech? I mean, we can still buy it today, right? And I don't know how many covers I melted off Ultratech just because I could, right? Because it was fun to do that, and that that you still had
Right.
the interior core to look after you. So yeah, so the implementation of just
Oh
the
yeah.
fair lead. I know it sounds so
Yeah.
simple, but that was a big thing for
And
many of us
it's
back
interesting
then.
how that thing has, the hitch
The
climber
new cordage.
basically is,
Yep.
a lot of people don't realize how significant that pulley underneath was because the hitch climber really, the whole hitch climber is based on that. That was the impetus or the evolution. The beginnings of the hitch climber was in that fair lead micro pulley, right, with the dog leash clip, and they tidied it up and made it
Absolutely.
better. And
Yes.
that's something that has been in a bit of discussion over the last couple podcasts. Is are the new innovations actually improving or solving a problem, or are they just sexy? But before we get to that, you can think about that. You were gonna mention another one, your third.
Oh well, yeah. Third innovation that
Okay,
I don't know if I would pin it down to a piece of
absolutely.
gear. Can I go outside of that? I I really feel that an innovative thing, and maybe it's just me again, maybe just in my life, but there was such an awareness, so much more of an awareness of how is the tree
Mm,
responding to all the things that we do to it. And one of my favorite exercises with college students was to identify all the things we do to a tree, with a tree, and just fill the whole chalkboard, whiteboard up with that, and then say, okay, which one of the things are you doing to the tree, and which one of these things are you doing for the tree? And you'd circle to the
mm,
tree in red, and you'd circle for the tree in green. And so often
right.
there's the red overpowered the green on the chalkboard or the whiteboard. And so what I saw happening in my own life personally, and I think in many of the students and the people that I encountered at conferences and training and all the rest was more, it's like, okay, yeah, what are we doing here to the tree? And why are we doing it? Why is this happening? Why are we doing this? I think there's just been a greater awareness of the value of trees in our world that makes it softer and easier to live in and more rewarding, all of that. So I think I see a greater awareness of that. So many of my students in post-secondary came in with already a love for trees of some kind. They didn't even know necessarily why, right? But they had that. And it was harder to find those students who didn't even know if they were cutting a spruce or a pine, right? Let alone a deciduous or a coniferous tree. And I know we can, No,
you're not. It just popped into my head, the whole soul of a tree thing that Shigo and Jack Phillips were working on. Which was that whole and I mean, I'm sure, you did the tree biology course with Jack. Was that along those lines? Does that fit that model you're talking about?
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely, Dwayne. And you even referenced this in, I can't remember if it was in the podcast that you guys did with Thor or the podcast with Norm. No, I can't remember. You'll know what I'm talking about. The old Legends of Arboriculture video that I've shown dozens and dozens of times to students to give them just a bit of a history, right? And at the very end,
Larry Hall.
Was it Norm or Larry? I get those guys mixed up. Hall. Yeah, Larry Hall talks about the mystical part of a tree. And then there's that cheesy tree branch that winks at you, right? And it is and it isn't cheesy, because it's like, okay, there is so much more going on here than which saw should I use to make this perfect cut, right? So, and I think I'm seeing, as an older guy in this world of arboriculture, a deeper awareness and appreciation of those sorts of things in a good way.
I agree. That's I really like that perspective, and we haven't had anyone go down that road yet, and it's very true. I really like that whole concept of are we doing it for the tree or to the tree? It's then you go all the way back to my first, where I would really say I connected with that concept was when I wrapped my head around, and it was compartmentalization, and then the link it had, the juxtaposition it had with cavity repair, and where they would clean it out, and cut through wall 4 in order to get to the good wood, and then and how it looked like the good thing to do, but it wasn't, and starting to realize, man, we really don't know what we're doing to these trees, maybe.
Yeah, I agree with you, Laurie, but I think one of the things that's happened too in arboriculture, and I think one of the reasons Dwayne and I really wanted to start this podcast is that we found that with newer arborists, a lot of it's about climbing the tree, it's about the gear, it's about the physical aspect of basically getting to work. You see very little on the work. Now granted, so some of it I'm gauging on, social media posts, which is what it is. And it was just pointed out to me recently, and it's very true. When you look on social media, what you see represented for tree work is a bunch of young guys, really high end trees, making small cuts, basically taking the tops out of single stem trees. And they're all doing removals. Everybody seems to film removals, creating all this stuff. And I think it's where the action's at, right? But I think that the true job of the arborist is really like, the way you put it, is it's sort of that interface between the trees and humans. It's, how the arborist's job is really to make the tree fit into the human interface, and sometimes the other way around, but more so. And I think that some of that's getting lost a little bit in I guess you'd say, the mainstream media for arboriculture. And I think it needs to be brought back around a little bit, because in the end, the climbing equipment I use, the rope I use, the harness I use, the knot I use, all that stuff, it's really just tools to get the job done, which is to care for the tree. Yeah. And for every professional that's out there doing the work, you're going to have a different set of tools. You know, concepts and principles will be similar, but methods are going to be different. But I think that on a mainstream media stage, a lot of that message is getting lost, right? You don't see tree care videos. You see tree removals videos. Now, I've taken down plenty of trees, and I'll admit some of them were frivolous and probably didn't need to come down. But I have bills to pay too. And sometimes a removal is a necessary part of the,
sure.
of the equation. But pruning and planting and root collar excavation and all those things are just as big a part of arboriculture. I think it gets lost a little bit. And I think that I didn't appreciate that until, later in my career. I wish somebody would have kind of clued me in a little bit. I think I got it quicker than many because I was, fortunate to have a, family involved in it, and my father being, and my older brother, influencing my career and whatnot. But I think it's lost a little bit. I think that turning back to, what are you doing it to the tree? You're doing it for the tree, and why? Sometimes you have to do things to two trees. It's just what it is, right? But you should also be doing things for trees.
Absolutely.
Right? And sometimes the best thing you can do for a tree is, well, just leave it alone.
Yes.
It's like, I constantly have to remind younger arborists, it's like, this tree, it doesn't really need your help. We were only working on it because it has to interface with our world. Yeah. We don't go out and prune trees in the forest. And there's a good reason for that, because they're just fine. So it's important to remember that. And you said that very elegantly. You implied that, but I think a little bit of it is missing.
Yeah. Interesting, Tony. Yeah. No, and I think that as a senior member of the active arboriculture community, especially here in the prairies, I want to try and convey that, or at least live that out. Right. And when I talk to clients and friends and even students, to keep that in mind and to remember that, right, as they learn the latest technique and learn how to make a 70 to 90 open face notch with an appropriate bore cut. It's like, yeah, don't forget what the thing that you are cutting into here. If it's dead now, it once was a living organism. And our Western society, sometimes I don't think we've fully grasped the meaningfulness of the living things around us and the privilege that we have to exercise our will on them and to make them conform to our stop signs, our crosswalks, our sight paths, all of that sort of thing.
It kind of hit home for me once in the oddest times. I don't know if you've watched the Lord of the Rings movies where they had the Ents, were the tree people, right? Remember the Ents? You remember how the Ents spoke?
Oh, of course. Yes.
They spoke really slowly.
Yes.
And when I started to think about that deeply, I'm like, that's genius, because if a tree could speak in a language, it would probably speak really slow because, well, it has time, right? And you start to look at the lessons tree can teach us, and I love when talking about tree biology, and you compare compartmentalization to how humans heal. And, you ask which one's better, right? And everyone inevitably says, well, I'd much rather be a human. And then I like to bring out, well, there are no 4,000-year-old humans on the earth.
Right.
But there are a few 4,000-year-old trees, right? And now they're limited. They don't get to move around like us do. So I guess there's no free lunch, but.
That Tony, that's something right there, and I'm sorry, I am kind of cutting you off there, but I don't want to, it's recently my stopping traveling, so to speak. Like, I've spent 25 years on the road for 280 days. I've been basically a tumbleweed, and it's been great. I've seen amazing things, and it was enjoyable, but I've made a conscious decision to, for my own health and wellness to stop traveling quite as much. And what you can appreciate when you stay in one place for a while. And I've only just started. I'm sure this is probably nothing new to anybody else, but the trees are an example of that. There's so much to discover, if you just, take time to open your eyes and be present and not get in such a rush. Mm-hmm. But sorry, it just piqued my, it piqued my thought on that. And there is so much to learn from the human forest, I think, in so many ways. But I hope I didn't make you lose the rest of your thought there. But
no, it's right along those lines. Like I said, there's, you said it well, Laurie, when you said, as a senior member of the arborist community. I think I'm getting to that point. Actually, ironically, Susie and I were taking a walk the other day, and it's like a Tuesday afternoon, and I'm like, man, this is weird. Look at all these old people walking down the path. And then I had to stop. I'm like, oh shit. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. But, these are the lessons I think it takes time to see, like I've asked a number of climbers experienced, we're talking world champion climbers, like have won the ITCC many times over, or at least multiple times. And I've asked each and every one of them, what piece of advice would you give to a young climber just getting into the arboricultural circuit, not necessarily competition, right? But as a production working arborist. And I'll tell you that before I give you my answer, you can give me your answer. But I can tell you that the answer I've gotten from a number, probably 3 to 4, is pretty much the same, right? Different variations on the theme. But I'd be interested to hear your answer before I give what I found.
Yeah, ask me what.
So you look back, you have to give advice to a younger person just getting into this field. What would say they have a decent skill set. They're interested. Okay. They want this to be a career. They have a decent skill set. I mean, they can climb, they can do some things. What would you what would be their next steps for them?
Stay as current as you possibly can, up to date with not just the newest piece of shiny gear, as much fun as that is, and I like shiny gear. I ride motorcycles. I like all of that kind of stuff, and I enjoy the pieces of gear that I have in my climbing kit for sure. But it's not just about that. It's like you said earlier, Tony. That's just how we get to the job. That's just how we get to where we do the actual interaction with that tree and provide the service that client has asked us to do. So stay current, stay up to date, stay as much as you can. I know not everybody can do all kinds of traveling and learning, and some of us have had some real privilege in that sort of thing. But don't squander the opportunities that you have. And so much of it you can learn now if you use the right filters in social media and by interacting with people who might know a little bit more than you do about what it means to be an arborist. So yeah, staying current, staying connected, maintaining those relationships. Don't thinking, I've got this down.
Good. That's good advice.
That's all I'm going to do.
That's good advice. The answer I got, and it's probably the one that I would give, was that once you got, you have a decent skill set, you know how to cut, you know how to climb. There's always more to learn there. Everyone would admit that. Is really start to learn about the trees and why trees do what they do. And because I think there's a lot of younger arborists out there that their skill set for climbing and cutting is good, but they don't, and they know how to make a proper pruning cut, and they might understand very basic tree biology, but they can't explain to you why you would thin one branch over another, or why you might leave a piece of dead wood, right? Or, there's many things that go into it. So, to take that time to start to learn about the trees and the structures that we're working on. And like I said, this came home for me luckily early. I was speaking at a conference with Dr. Kim Coder from University of Georgia. We were having lunch, and I forget what I asked him. I might have even told you. I know Dwayne's heard this story, but I don't know if I told you, Laurie. But I asked him. I forget. It was a question about removals or whatnot, and Dr. Coder, in his very emphatic and somewhat breathless way, said, "Tony, if you're going to take a tree down, take it down the way it was put together." And it took me a little while to get it, but then I started to understand that. And that kind of launched me down the learning path of really starting to look into why do trees stand? Why do we have trees instead of huge ferns? When my dad started arboriculture, it might have been huge ferns. I used to give him a hard time. I'd say, back in your day, Dad, the motto was, today is brush, tomorrow's coal. But, why have trees lasted so much longer than other things, and to really start to understand that. my musings.
Yeah, I think I didn't express it as well as you have there, Tony. But that's part of what I would mean by staying current too, right? Just not on the latest climbing technique, but man, yeah, know what you're in, know what you're on, know why you shouldn't prune this tree in the middle of summer.
Well, it was like Shigo would always talk about touching trees, and there's so much, I think, like, even having been living in a classroom called a tree care company where you're, not only removing trees, pruning trees, but you're touching wood all the time. You're touching trees, and just keeping an open mind to what you're looking at, and curiosities and weird growth formations, and even the sound the wood makes when you chip it, and the vibration of the wood when it hits the blades, if you're lucky enough to feel that, safely. but you're in a living room, so to speak, and the learning is all around you, really, especially if you're lucky enough to be a production climber. Pruning up in what you see up in the canopy is just, you're in the heart of the tree, right? Like, I was recently looking at an arborist report, and well, it was DJ, my son, who's doing tree work, and he had all these photos from, he was evaluating this person's tree, but in the report he had photos from the tree, in the canopy. And I mean, nowadays it's so easy to do, of course, like he just had his phone, but it was in the report. So the customer was looking not only at their tree from the ground, but, as he described what the tree, there was photos from in the tree. And I just thought it's just, most people don't, we kind of take it for granted, we can get up there and have a look around, but like a homeowner, how often did they ever see the union that he's talking about? There was a codominant union, and he has a picture from the top looking down, so you can see this union here is to be watched, and this is why. And it was just interesting to me but what it's like getting back to what you said, Tony, and maybe this could be a lesson to people listening. Like you're in a living laboratory that could teach you so much if you take the time to watch, and not just make it about how fast you can swing to the next branch or how cool you look doing it. Like there's this, it's like I guess it's part of with age, but what you miss driving too fast, what you don't look at with your head down when you're going hiking up a mountain, what you don't see because you aren't paying attention to what's around you. And I guess this whole topic kind of started with the slowing down thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah. I would say I would be interested, Laurie, on your perspective. A lot of these things we're talking about, some of it comes with being in the industry for so long. And I know that in my case, some of these lessons were accelerated because I was and still am a traveling trainer, right? Because I had the opportunity to get out of the bubble that I worked in and could get out and see other things. How much do you accredit, your learning or your experience in arboriculture, having those same experiences, getting away from a single company and going somewhere else and teaching somebody something? Has that accelerated these lessons for you, or what's your perspective?
Absolutely, Tony. Yeah, that's for sure. And I think that just goes across so many disciplines and industries. If you can get out and look at some things from other people's perspectives, and whether that's geographically or even being able to see that in the world of social media that we have now, even that can help you do that when you start to look at it in different places and see how things are done differently and see how trees are respected in different ways. Just a quick little story. When I got to be the city arborist for the city of Kamloops, which is in the interior of British Columbia, in the early 90s. And I was totally stressed out when I found out they actually offered me the job, because that means we're moving to BC. This is the land of tree worshipers. These people know trees, like they understand them, they live them. I know I'm exaggerating here some, but there was that feeling of, wow, this is a real tree world. I'm from cold Canadian prairies, and I'm going to go into a desert environment. anyway, when I get there, it's like all of a sudden I'm the expert in that little world in the urban part of the central part of BC there in Kamloops. And all of a sudden people are asking me things, and they're asking me things that, yeah, I did learn those. I know all that. Well, that's so simple. You should know this, right? Not in a judgmental way, but I would expect them to know that. And so it was a whole different perspective. And not to go too far down this path, but a little ways, is you learn about what you don't have much of. You can, right? If that's a focus of yours, and when you compare the amount of canopy cover that's in the prairies compared to what's in British Columbia, there's a huge difference there. And BC has a lot of trees, and it's just rich with variety and diversity, all of that. We're a little more limited in the prairies, and that helped me see that how do I say that? I know more than I think I do, and I need to be careful about how I pass judgment on others who I think should know more just because they have more, right? And sometimes we appreciate more what we have less of, I guess, is maybe a way I could say that.
It's like someone that lives in the desert really appreciates water. You
got it, Dwayne. Good one. Yes. Yeah.
Right. And someone lives on the prairie. You know, when you live where trees aren't as prolific, you know, like people they go to great lengths to want it. Like when it takes 40 years for it to grow to be of size, not 4.
Yeah, totally.
You know, you just treat them differently, and you it's interesting because I've always wondered, and I think it's touching a little bit, like, you know, and there's a lot of it's interesting where some pretty infamous and even famous arborists come out of prairie type locales, or not in the PNW, just, you know, like where trees aren't quite as where they just have a little bit more of a hard time growing, or they I don't know what they like Wisconsin seems to have a high concentration of, you know, active arborists, and they're everywhere, but I don't know, maybe that's off base, but it's interesting.
Yeah, well,
I get what you're trying to say.
Okay, yeah, cool. And just to bring it back to your original question there, Tony, if I may, is the diversity that we expose ourselves to across our 2 great nations and beyond, and learning from other people like that really does deepen our understanding and make us wider and more accepting of different points of view, if we want to go down that far. But yeah, it makes me a better arborist in the end, is if I can see how Tony handles these things in Pennsylvania and my DJ does out on the west coast of British Columbia. Totally richness.
Yeah, it is interesting how you want to get into different parts of the country and different parts of the world, how trees are viewed. Like nowhere else, and I've traveled a lot of the world doing tree work, except for like, Pacific Northwest of the States here, and then the western coast of Canada. Nowhere else does anybody describe trees as scary, except in that. Like the general uneducated person would be like, man, that's a scary tree. And it's just, nowhere else do they, well, unless it's like falling over, which,
right.
That's one thing. But a perfectly healthy tree that's been there for 300 years is scary. So it's just interesting how they view them. And to your point, Dwayne, I think you're right. I think that, when you have a wealth of riches in trees and tree diversity and size, and places where you can put a stick in the ground and it'll probably start growing, you don't appreciate it as much as where, for a tree to get 40 feet tall and 12 inches DBH is like a 70-year process.
Right.
And a lot of people think, especially in northern Canada, it's like, yeah, you guys get so much snow a year, but it's essentially a desert because that water is not available.
Yep.
It's not available to the tree. So, and it is interesting to see. And then kind of to your point, Laurie, it reminded me, one of my most valuable training lessons ever had to do with people. Is don't ever expect yourself from other people. And when I figured that one out, life got a lot easier. But it comes from, because you're right. Like you go out and you go do a training, and it's the classic. And I think probably all of us have experienced this. You go out and you're excited. You're going to teach a climbing course. I haven't taught a climbing course in so long, and you're going to teach and then you go out and you start talking about the history of climbing, and you tie a taunt line and you put a micro pulley underneath it, and the crowd looks at you like you just gave them fire, right? Like, and part of you is excited because you know that you're going to tell them things that they couldn't possibly imagine that day. But then part of you is sort of disappointed because it's like, man, I really wanted to talk about stationary rope systems, but that's not happening today.
Yeah, good one.
And I used to be a little bit disappointed in the students, because how could you guys not understand what a micro pulley is? But then when I started to realize that I can't expect my experiences and the way I see the world to project upon other people, because see, is when I learned that, I mean, I couldn't get enough, right, from a technical standpoint. It's one of the reasons I started training, because the best way to learn new shit was to just hang out with like Dwayne and Scott and all these guys until they gave me a job, but
I hear you.
Which is another repeated theme.
Yeah. You bring up a really interesting point. I want to just get your guys' take on this, and maybe this will take us out as far as a good close to this session. But with all the innovation and technology, like, so we got all like the new stuff that's available. It's quite staggering. It really is. It's amazing, really, and it's just never stopped since like the early 2000s. I agree, Laurie. But then you got the internet, and you got phones, and you got Insta and TikTok, and you got the stuff you can find is just unbelievable. And yet, part of me is starting to wonder, and part of it's been doing these podcasts and the different people we've been talking to, this whole concept of the 10%. I'm wondering, and you just nailed it on the head there, Tony. Like you think you gotta have this new stuff, but 90% of the industry out there maybe really is still like some of the 2000 techniques and innovations are really still quite new. But we live in this world of connectivity where we're connected to this 10%, and we think that's the way it maybe is, and we go to the competitions, and even there's still so many people that don't even know there is a tree climbing competition.
Yeah,
absolutely. Seems ludicrous to us, but there's so many people that don't know. And I think that this technology and this information has almost widened the gap, not made it narrower, which is really interesting. But I'm just curious what you would feel about that, or your comments would be on that.
You can go first, Laurie. I got plenty of comments.
I thought maybe you would. Yeah, that's a hard thing to measure, right? And especially where us three get to be at, and with the contacts and the relationships we have with leaders in the industry. Hard thing to measure, but I see it. I just did, well, it was a year ago, but so that's pretty fresh for a 6-year-old guy. A year ago, did a consult for a local farmer here, because the road is going to get widened and there's going to be trees. And this farmer, who I know quite well, knows he's got quite a little valuable stand of trees here, and they're going to get damaged. Well, I'm having, and we're meeting on site, and there's probably 9 of us there, and more than half of the people there are from the local county. And I'm actually flabbergasted. I don't show it, but flabbergasted that the tiny bit of money that they would give per tree to compensate a landowner. And I know I could easily defend this farmer in court, and he's going to get probably 5, 8, 10 times the value of this tree. And they were so far behind, even in understanding the value of trees. Now, to be fair, I said perhaps, and I'm not even going to mention the county. I said perhaps the county needs to relook at how they're valuing trees, because there's many places in Western society that put a much higher value on trees and can justify that. And to give this fellow credit, and it was a fellow, he said, that's probably right. We do need to relook at that. So that was a good indicator for me, not on necessarily climbing stuff there, Dwayne, but on something that affects our community, even in our society in a bigger way. And these are leaders in society, right? And I mean, I know I'm talking to people who already know this, but it kind of got me, because I'm used to being in the world that I'm in. And what do you mean? You're going to give $200 for a tree that could be valued? I can justify the value of that tree at $5,000 or $8,000, and you're going to give this guy $200 for that? Yeah. So I think there is a disconnect
I don't think it is relegated to only tree climbing by any means.
No,
I mean, it's all over the place, but that's interesting. Yeah. It's, well, looks like Tony's been biting his tongue here. He's ready to go.
Let's hear some thoughts there, Mr. Tressel.
Well, no, I do agree with you, Dwayne, and I was reminded of it when we talked with Don Blair last week that really probably conservatively 80% of the arboricultural community production doing tree work for a living is probably still on a mid 2000s skill set, and I'm not saying that's wrong. I think that you can use 3-strand rope and a butt strap harness and a handsaw, and I think you can get a lot of good work done.
They did
on trees.
Yes.
I mean, we did it for decades. I think that, in the long run, there's more efficient ways and things like that. But I think, the number of times I've had to go out to a private company, and just have the discussion about wearing a hard hat is amazing, much less, some of these innovative climbing stuff. And I agree with you. I think that as, I think the industry itself is basically serving the top 10% of production workers, and it's misrepresented. And I think that as that gets misrepresented, it does widen that gap, because where's the guy that, look, his boss isn't going to buy him anything beyond a rope, a couple carabiners, a micro pulley, and a harness. He's interested enough in the work, and he enjoys doing the work, but it's probably not going to be a 30-year career. So he's, but he can still get work done and get work done safely. Where does he go for training? Right.
Right.
How does he learn to move through a tree on a Blake's hitch or a taunt line in a micro pulley? There's not a lot of places for him to go. So he or she sees these advanced climbing courses. They're like, I ain't going to that. I don't need it. So I think it's a little bit misrepresented. And it was telling too, referring back to our last interview with Don Blair, was, when I asked him if he was going to invent something new and innovate something new in the industry, what would he do? And it was fascinating when he basically said he would look for a need, and then he would exploit that need. Yes. Right. And I don't think innovation is going that way. I think men and women are just inventing stuff because they're doing it because it's something that they find interesting, but I don't think they're exploiting a need. Like, how many different versions of a porter wrap do we really need? How many mechanical climbing devices are enough? And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong, nor am I victimizing or criticizing people that invent that new stuff, but I think they're going about it the wrong way. I think Don's point was very clear. It's like, we'll find a need in the industry and then address that. And it goes back to our argument, like way back when, when the micro pulley came out and the Blake's hitch came out, every one of those innovations solved a problem. So we adopted it pretty quickly, and we didn't argue about it. Now we get these innovations that aren't necessarily solving a problem. They're just a different method, and we get arguments.
Yeah, good one. Good observations, Tony. Yes.
Yeah, and it almost kind of started that, like, our ability as an industry was made aware of that, of the possibility of monumental change. I think probably started when Shigo said we don't have to paint.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been argued, or I've heard it said, that never before has such a long-standing, not only tradition but technique been so quickly abandoned by an industry. Because it was dirty and messy and a pain in the ass, and then to find out that it actually doesn't make a difference. Holy crap! It worked on every level. And then you go all the way back to, when I remember we were doing some design work at Buckingham, And someone asked why the little snap is on the handsaw scabbard, because it never really worked to hook anything up, and we finally, through a bit of discussion and talking around it, it came about that it was to hook on the damn paint pot. And they were like, we never took it off and they hadn't been painting cuts for 20 years and they still put the connecting link on the dang scabbard because I don't know why it was there. People wanted it there, so that's why it's there. And there's something to be said for that. Like, are we aware of why we did it or why we don't do it? Like, is it just tradition? Is it just you got to have the new hitch because it's the new hitch? Or is it because it actually does something? Yeah. Anyways, it's interesting.
That's a great point. I'm thinking through, and I've done these podcasts and have talking to people like Laurie and all the people we've talked about. I think my next piece of advice for a new budding arborist would be, after you learn about tree and tree biology and you have a decent skill set, then start to learn the history and culture of the work we've been doing and understand it, because then you can start to put the pieces all together. Right.
Okay. Well, can I challenge that, Tony, a little bit?
Sure. Yeah.
I think about that lots, and sometimes I think that way and tend to go that way because I am an old guy and I'm trying to preserve the past or whatever, right? So here, if I can put you on the spot here, and you have editing power, so you can remove all this.
Absolutely.
How does it benefit the new climber, the new budding, sorry for the pun, arborist, to know about history? I have my own answers to that, but where are you at with it? How does it help them?
I think like anything, it's hard to know where you're going if you don't know where you've been.
That's a good one. I agree. Yep.
I mean, now that's cliche and
I know.
Very general. I think it can help from repeating past mistakes, because I'll often see somebody come up with this new climbing technique or something. And it's like, we've been down this road before, right? Like the classic example, and it's one that seems to come around every once in a while, is you're going to put a pull line in the tree anyway to pull the stub over. So why don't you just take a figure 8 and rappel down it, And, you could have the discussion about climbing lines and rigging lines are built differently, the amount of dirt, all that stuff. So I think it helps in the fact that you can say, look, we've been down this road before, and this is where we went wrong. So, if you can't learn from your own mistakes, can you learn from ours?
Right. Is
part of it. And then I think finally, and maybe most importantly, it just gives you an appreciation for the culture and the richness of working on trees. And by, maybe by delving into a little bit of the history and, Dwayne's story of the hook with the paint pot, and then starting to understand why people painted trees, then you can really start to appreciate the rest of it too, right? You can appreciate a well-made pruning cut. You can, and I think it'll just understanding history. When I've looked into the history of things on many different subjects, it's basically opened up those rabbit holes that I dove down and just learned a ton of things that I apply to, the present day.
Good words.
That would
be
my response.
Yes. And most appropriate. I can echo all of those words for sure, Tony. Thank you for letting me challenge that little bit of thinking there. Cool.
And to be clear, I don't think you have to have a history course in arboriculture.
No.
But I do think you need to understand, the rudiments of it and how it started, and understand the evolution and the progress that we've gone through from, not only a production standpoint, but a scientific standpoint.
Totally agree with you. Yeah, it's not just you got to listen to 2 or 3 old guys talking about the past, and you have to learn that because you have to respect them in some way. It's not about that. No. It's about what can I learn from hearing those senior folks. How can I save myself, right? And man, I think back to my experiences and how much I learned from those who knew more than me and were older than me, and somehow in my youthful arrogance, I managed to get a little bit of that, right? I could have done way better. I get it. I know for sure.
Yeah. And it's really, the attitude. It's an attitude, it's like willing to learn. Like if you learning from whoever, If you don't know it, you don't know it. And how someone gets to know it, whether they're older or younger, it sometimes they're older, but it's being willing to learn and be teachable, I think
Yes.
is a matter of the heart.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, it sometimes expands and grows with age, and sometimes it hardens and closes.
Yes.
And you know, life circumstances can make that so. But if you're able to, you know, I guess be humble enough, and you know, humility is knowing your own truth. You know, knowing the truth about yourself, not just knowing it, but admitting it.
Yes.
And when you can know that you don't know and admit that you don't know, then you're open to learning, and you can be open to learning. And that it's sometimes easier as a young person, and it's sometimes harder as an old person, but it's necessary for us all at every age in order to keep the learning of journey going. The journey of learning going, I should say.
Yeah, no, I get it. I totally agree, Dwayne. And what did I learn today? Right off the top, most recent, what's that stupid snap for on my old scabbard? I never knew that.
Yeah.
That was for the paint pots.
I thought I told you that.
Well, maybe you probably did, but I've forgotten it. But I don't remember that. It's like, okay, there we go.
I actually found one of the old pots, brand new, like that they used to use, and it snaps on perfect.
Yeah. Oh, it makes great sense for sure. Yeah, no, for sure. No, and that's not to yeah. I totally hear what you're saying about having the right attitude for there. Lots of us have those people that are even older in our lives that show an attitude of learning and know that they don't know, and then we have some of those that they got hardened, like you said, Dwayne, for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's been a great session, and Laurie, we're extending it to everyone that, you know, where we've realized that it may not be your last. So if you are enjoying it as much as we have, we certainly could do a sequel, and we're planning some with others already. And thank you for taking time out of your busy day and for sharing your time with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's always a joy and a privilege and an honor for me to spend time with high-quality individuals. And it's been great to spend this last 60, 70 minutes with you guys. So thank you for building value into my life. Thank you.
You're welcome.